like to welcome you all to our webinar today. This is the second in a series of 3 webinars that we're running with the Strategic Growth for Enterprise to help support businesses through these challenging times. Today we have Steve Hyde, the founder and CEO of Push, and Nick Rickson, founding partner of SGFE. They'll be talking about how businesses can thrive in a crisis. My name is Nimesh Patel, and I'm the marketing manager here at Push, and I'll be following up with you after the webinar. We'll be recording today's event, and we'll be sharing the recording and details of how you can register for the next event on Thursday, the 16th of April. With the formalities over and done with, I'd like to introduce Steve Hyde, CEO of Push. Steve.
Great. Well, it helps if I take mute off. I started speaking and mute was on. So welcome to everybody. We'll crack on. My bit will take about 20 minutes, then I'm going to hand over to Nick. So if we can just press ahead with the slides, that would be great. So I'm going to start off very quickly by talking you through how we've worked at Push. So we have grown up in this post-digital era, working closely with Google, Amazon and Facebook. So that's the zone that we work in. But enough about Push. This is really about the opportunity in the digital sector. And as you can see in this really important chart, the digital advertising industry has completely smashed and transformed the advertising sector in less than a decade. If you look at the numbers here from 2010 and then look at what's happened by 2019, look at the massive change in the move away from traditional media like TV, radio and print towards mobile and desktop. And what we've seen with this very unfortunate crisis is that's only accelerated an even faster move away from that. So I'll be sharing some information later on from Google, Facebook and Microsoft to give you some insight there. So if we can keep moving on. This chart I talked about last week was really important, and it is this: when we sit around the dinner table or over a coffee or over a beer and we're having a natter with our friends and we're saying, how did Toys R Us go bust? How did Thomas Cook go down? How did Debenhams get it wrong? How did so many of these smaller businesses just fail to move with the times? The problem is that organizations just cannot change quickly enough. They change logarithmically at a logarithmic rate, whereas technology changes exponentially. And I explained last week from the Industrial Revolution, we've seen this sort of pattern, but the pace of change is speeding up. And you'll see an example of that on the next page, where we look at how video it has quickly come to a point where now, as consumers, we are now spending more time looking at video than we are looking at the internet than we are through TV. So this shows you an inflection point in media consumption. And what happens here is that this is going to accelerate, and you'll see the dollars following continually. So this is an overall position looking at amount of time spent on the internet versus TV. That's only going to accelerate as we move further forward. Right, so if we look at where we are in Europe, Middle East and Africa, so EMEA, there are 34 million small and medium-sized businesses. Of those, 33% have no website and 75% have not even invested in digital. So there's a massive opportunity out there to outpace your competition if you're playing the tactics right. And the whole point of this section is to try and show you where and how you can play and invest that money if we move on to the next page. So you'll hear loads about Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, Google, cost per click, cost per acquisition. There's so much lovely rhetoric and hyperbole out there around trying to make people feel that marketing is something extraordinarily complex and only for the unbelievably intelligent. It's not. Fundamentals of marketing remain the same. We grab people's awareness, we stimulate their interest and their desire, and we move on to action. And so trying to keep that in mind, just take a look at the next few pages as we look at what's happened. So what we've seen is that companies that are really nurturing leads through this funnel, if you like, by not just paying attention to the very bottom, but they're looking at nurturing leads over time. We see a 450% increase in the number of qualified prospects. Those that take the time to nurture and grow those customer relationships see 50% more sales at a 33% lower cost. So this isn't just data from push, this is data across the market from Google and from Facebook and so on. So if we carry on, and what we've seen, I think we all know this from our own behavior, is that customer journeys have become increasingly complex. So what I showed on the previous chart is that funnel process is vital. So you might be building up the interest of a client on Facebook or perhaps on YouTube and continuing to engage with them on Instagram, or it might be that you started off on LinkedIn or elsewhere, and gradually they're moving around devices and they're picking up more signals that indicate to them that you might be an interesting business, and for you that you're getting a sense of where they are as a customer or a potential customer. So it's really important that we reach audiences at every stage in order to maximize awareness. Previously, 10 years ago, if you'd asked me a question about digital advertising, I would have said, you know what, really just focus hard on Google PPC. Getting that bit right would have been enough. It's not anymore. It's still a vital part of the mix, right? But it's making sure that you've got all of these other platforms covered. So across the Facebook network of Facebook and Instagram, across the Microsoft network of obviously Microsoft Bing and LinkedIn and so on. And of course, Amazon. How can we forget Amazon? So let's crack on and show you some interesting examples, I hope. So what we're going to see here are 3 key points. So where we feel we're at the moment is, you know, obviously with this situation, with this crisis, it feels like in the UK, you know, we're in for another few weeks of lockdown. But there is going to be a point that people are going to be visiting homes again, installing broadband, conducting repair services, getting their cars repaired, going to florists and so on. We will return to some degree of economic activity. It will be staged. There's no doubt about that. It's not going to go back to how it was in overnight. It's going to be a gradual change, and there'll be, to use an overused phrase at the moment, a new normal. So develop a new long-term strategy. Look beyond just the next month or two. Think about where we're going in the next 3 to 4 months. Look at moving multi-platform. So what we mean by that, it's a mouthful, it's not my phrase, but what we mean is you can't just rely on one form of digital acquisition for your customers. You can't just rely on LinkedIn. You can't just rely on Google. You have to use all of these different platforms, and by combining them in a journey together, you can get the lowest cost per lead, the lowest cost per sale. And there's plenty of evidence to demonstrate that, as you'll see some case studies here. And finally, build on demand products or online experiences into your journey. So let's move on to some examples. So this is a business to business case study. I'd go in, I thought I could start, I've got some crackers here, but I'd start with one. This is a big business in waste collection. So it's primarily was business to business. It had a secondary product that was for business card terminals. Now, previously, they were just upselling the business card terminals to waste customers, but their waste leads dropped by 50%. Not surprising when you think that people aren't in offices or factories, because so business waste has declined. And they switched their entire sales team and retrained them to focus on a new vertical, which has been around these card terminals. They have a complete new profit line that they've made in 7 days, and it's doing fantastically well for them. So really good example of something that's been able to turn around very quickly. The phrase that's, you know, it's a real American phrase. I'll call it adapt. People like starting to show that they're a little bit smarter than me by using the word pivot. But look, they just adapted quickly. Okay, they were proactive and they were able to change quickly. So great example of the B2B company. If anyone wants any further insight into these type of things, feel free to get in touch with me or any of the team at Push. So let's crack on and look at the next. So this is an example of business to consumer service. So this is property investment. So what we saw here is by refocusing the strategy aimed at foreign property investors with the relevant message, has increased the lead volume by over 100% and increased, it says there, the CPL. That's classic that this has been put together by one of my team. Many people won't know what that means. The cost per lead, by 52%, WOW, that's week on week. So their cost per lead has dropped by over half week on week by making some changes to the messaging and focusing on a foreign audience in other markets. So we're actually actively marketing these properties in overseas markets, and we know which markets work and have been testing that for some time. So let's crack on and look at the next one. So this is, I mean, to be honest with you, it's so hard getting PR in virtually well, but this is an absolute cracker. So this is a business that does gifting, personalized gifting. Their year on, if you look at the right hand side, their year on year cost per click, CPC, is down by 25%. So what that should tell you is that there are less people advertising. Meanwhile, they're eating their competitors' lunch and filling their boots up. Their traffic is up 500%. Their sales on Tuesday this week, so this is a random Tuesday, it's not a Tuesday that happens to be before Mother's Day or Father's Day, it's a random Tuesday in April. They were higher than Black Friday, and their overall sales are up 350%. They've had a record month. They're absolutely having a stunning time, and we're finding in the e-commerce sector there's some real big success stories here, and it stands to reason if you just think about your own behavior. I'm sat at home in Oxford at the moment, and tomorrow the bins come along. I've got about half an hour, sadly, packing away brown cardboard boxes because my wife we've ended up having to buy so much stuff online, you know, because stuff that we'd normally gone to shops to buy, retail, we're buying online. Classic example here, and we used importantly there, as we move on to the next chart, we used on multi-channel, so Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. Same here again. So this is coffee. So this is coffee. Again, we're using multi-channel, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, also available on Amazon. Again, there on the right-hand side, their CTR, so their click-through rate, the amount of people clicking through, looking at them is up by nearly double. Their traffic is up 73%. Their conversion rate, that's what CVR means, is up 150%. I'm laughing at these because I'm thinking of how we put these charts together and thinking me translating them to a wider audience. And ROAS, that's return on advertising spend, so, or return on investment, if you like. So we've used affiliate extensions available in Waitrose. We've seen big leaps in conversion, and their overall sales have doubled year on year. This is for a coffee-based product. So we're actively, if to anyone out there, if you know of anyone in the food sector or has a food product that is needing to sell or in consumer goods, please do let them get in touch with us, because we're turning around these campaigns very quickly to get people on board. If you can't get them in touch with us, just tell them they need to get online. It doesn't matter who. If it's a decent business, they need to get online, and they need to be focusing on a multi-platform solution. So final case, and then I've got some insights as we go through it now. So the insights that I'm going to show you on the next few pages are from Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, and then I'll hand over to Nick. So just another few minutes of your time on these. So this is from Facebook. So what we're seeing is a 32% increase in online shopping activities across all markets, a 50% increase in internet usage across Europe, 70% increase in time spent across Facebook's family of apps since the start of the crisis in Italy. So look at the numbers at the bottom. Online versus in-store grocery sales growth is threefold, twofold increase in Instagram and Facebook live views, and plus 40% of all retail sales in the UK could move online if the virus, heaven forbid, becomes more of an epidemic from where it is already. So let's carry on. Let's crack through these pages. This one is actually I'd like to dwell on. So this one is showing you the cost per click by region. So the cost, if you like, of a visitor by region. If you look at the bottom of the chart, you'll see Western Europe, Southern Europe, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and North America. And then you'll see time. Now, what you can see, if you look at December, if we can just point December out, you'll see obviously a spike. So cost per clicks go up at that time because lots of people are competing for advertising space. But just as the point on the right-hand side says, like the stock market, there's an opportunity to buy inventory, to buy space as the market lowers down. And we've obviously seen a significant decline since the COVID crisis. But what you'll notice is at last some good news. So it's a declining cost per click, which is great if you're advertising and not backing down the hatches and squirreling away all your money, but you're actually investing to grow. But if you look at the yellow line showing March 2020, that's East Asia. So that includes the markets of Singapore, China, and beyond. And what it's showing is that, and we know this for a fact from talking to Google in China, businesses are back spending advertising and competing now for that space. So ad spend since March is up by 15% in East Asia. So good indication that we, just like them, we will come out of this and there'll be some return to a higher level of economic activity. So if we look at the next, this will show you a little insight into how you can make a big bit of difference by just a small change in messaging. So in this case, we're adding reassurance regarding the delivery, and that increased the return on advertising spend, the return on ROAS by over 100%. So look at the different imaging there, look at the types of content we've used to try and improve that. So big increase from a very small change there in this case. And obviously this is a fancy item that's used. It's a great product used by a company called Illuminated Mirrors. And obviously for people smartening up their homes, it's ideal. I think you've gone backwards. So let's keep going forwards. So this one again is an example of refocusing the message to say, we are here for you. Enjoy free delivery on all orders. So again, look at the messaging, and what that's done is increase the number of purchases by over 65% week on week. Good examples of changes in messaging and the approach to enforce a different type of message around free delivery and so on. Next page. So search is really changing. So how people are searching. This is looking at changes week on week, WOW. What's interesting here is that, last week, for example, so video, this is very recent data from Google. So searches for video games week on week are down. For teaching, week on week are down. So it's showing you a change from a very high spike, obviously, where people were looking for these particular things. But look and focus your attention on the right-hand side of what's increasing demand. So they've highlighted some in bold, like the bar scanner, which related to the payment system that we talked about earlier, cash till supplies. You can see that as the weather is increasing, or they're changing, swimming pools, patio furniture, barbecues. Nick and I were talking earlier, you cannot buy fitness equipment for love nor money at the moment. And what's one of the sad things is that you've had this crazy situation where people are desperate for home fitness stuff, and it's either on a 4 or 5 week delivery schedule or it's out of stock. It's mad. But things like parasols, barbecues and grills, if you haven't got one already, try and get them quickly. Good luck with that. I've been in the doghouse because our barbecue is looking pretty rusty when I looked at it earlier today. So yeah, you can see some of the things that are increasing in demand, and we're tracking that data literally day by day to see how things are improving. The challenge is actually finding businesses that are open to these opportunities, but they're out there, and there's many other opportunities. If you want to know what your market is doing. Again, feel free to get in touch. Doesn't cost anything to give it, for us to give you some basic insight on what's happening in your sectors. Final charts from me. So again, this reflects information from Microsoft. This is looking that despite the demand for furniture decreasing, not surprisingly, garden furniture queries are growing very significantly. So we've seen a big spike in those for things like garden and patio type queries on through Microsoft. And bear in mind, people often overlook Microsoft, but it's embedded in a lot of people's technology. So not far off 10% of searches in the UK are from Microsoft. And again, good opportunity to get low cost traffic to your site. Final page here. This is an interesting one. Who would have thought this blinds is a real top growing query. Venetian and wooden blinds. This stuff, some of the stuff you can really predict, like garden furniture. Some of the stuff to me is perhaps less predictable. So with that in mind, at 2:25, I think we're going to now move on to handing over to Nick. For those of you that weren't listening in last week, so Nick has been involved in helping grow Push for a very long time. He's a brilliant coach, and we particularly wanted him involved in these webinars because some of the stuff that he stood on stage at Google many times with us, I mean, we've probably been on stage at Google best part of a dozen times together, and he used to go on about this economic clock and also about the if you like, the economic cycles that we're going through. And to a large extent, Nick was able to show that what we're going through at the moment was to some extent predictable. But I'll hand over to the wonderful Nick Rickson.
Thanks, Steve. Fascinating. I love some of those numbers. So blinds, I'm assuming because more people are at home now looking out of their window rather than looking out of their office window.
Yeah.
Needing blinds. So yeah, should have seen that one coming. Fitness equipment is quite amazing. I'm watching stuff I just managed to buy before it went crazy. Selling on eBay at the moment for 2 and 3 times the price. Absolutely crazy. So quite interesting. What I should have done last time was I talked about the economic cycle. I hope those of you that were able to tune into it managed to gather the thought process that it is predictable. We do follow a cycle. We may not always know what is going to cause market resets or market tumbles. And in 74, 75, the double was an oil crisis. In the 2008, 2009, it was a banking crisis. The 87 crash was a storm and a whole bunch of other things. And this one is a virus. And people often say to me, well, you couldn't possibly have predicted that. And unfortunately, all they need to do is look at some of the video that Steve's talking about where I did predict it. But so did a number of people who know how the markets react and respond to certain things. And that's mostly because people do the same thing. So I wanted to go through today what we've been doing with some of our clients. I wanted you to get that the business cycle is what it is, and it keeps repeating itself. So does the economic cycle. If you didn't hear me, because I do speak at 350 words a minute with gusts up to 500, we get really excited. Check the economic clock. We are currently at 9 o'clock. The best one to use is an economic clock. If you Google economic clock, it's one by an Australian accounting business called Count, rather creatively. Go and have a look at that, and that really will predict what's going on in the economy. For you, unless you are invested in the market, what you use that for and what you use the stock market for in an all index is a guideline to what's going to happen in the economy. So what Steve's showing you there is lots of responses to what's happening in the markets, because all the markets are is a predictor of what's going to happen in the economy in 6 to 12 months' time. Now, this one's happened really quickly because government intervened and said, could everybody please stop shopping in public and going out? So we've been forced into this much, much quicker. My expectation is that we will be forced out of it much quicker. So the market already bounced in Europe 3% because the cases in Europe have flattened or even in some instances gone backwards. And that's how fast the market and also therefore the economy, because again, we're not out yet, but the market's already gone, oh, look, it's flattened. That means that in 2 to 3 months' time, the market's going to start coming back. So all that being said, that's just something for you to watch, something to give you a bit more confidence that this is going to end. I dug out an old phrase of mine that I used to use a lot when people were going through uncertain times. And it goes like this: the certainty of misery is better than the misery of uncertainty. And I've got to tell you, at this moment, there has never been a more uncertain time in most people's minds until you start to look at the trends of the last 100 years. And you'll just see this repeat over and over and over again. So that's the first thing. If you are a small business owner, there are a number of practical things that you must do. And I'm sorry if I'm stating the bleeding obvious here, but I've been through 3 recessions where I've had to retrench, none quite as weird as this one, I have to say, none quite as strange, but I remember waking up on the morning of the 87 Black Monday, and then the year that followed that was quite a tough year. The first thing you have to knuckle down to is cash. Now, cash doesn't necessarily mean, you've got to raid the piggy bank and look down the back of the sofa. This is maximizing every possible area that you can extract cash from, whether that's government grants, whether that's Lloyd's Bank lending you money. We had a manager from Lloyd's present to our client group yesterday or the day before, and he was saying and letting us know that, for example, the private guarantees, warranties that are now needed are 0 below 250,000. And in some instances, there's no director's guarantees or loan guarantees required in loans above 250,000. And all he needs from a bank, from a banking perspective, is a viable business plan. Now, we did make the comment at the time, nobody can put a business plan together right now. But what he's looking for is, could you demonstrate your business was viable before this crash? If you can demonstrate that you're not in an industry that's been completely smashed, but if you can demonstrate that post this, when the market comes back, you will have a viable business again, they will fund the gap. As long as you are managing your costs as tightly as you can, and you've maximized all of the funding from elsewhere. There's a really important lady to follow if you can. If you can track down Catherine Maxwell, I'm sure somebody will send you the link. She's blogging on issues to do with furloughing. Had a comment in one of her furloughs the other day, which I thought was quite amazing, was if you furlough staff, the business can pick up 80%. Somebody will need to check this, pick up 80% from the government. That furloughed staff member can't work for you, but they can work for somebody else. And apparently, whether that's a loophole that will get filled at some point, I'm not sure. But there are lots of interesting ways that you can find cash. So first thing, you need to conserve it as much as you can. You need to talk to your staff. Our team's all taken up to 50% pay cuts. I had a CEO group of 30 plus CEOs the other day. There wasn't a CEO in there or an owner that hadn't taken anywhere up to 50% pay cuts to demonstrate to staff that they were doing everything they possibly can. All of my supplier team that supply resources and services to my business have agreed to go on a 50% haircut for the next 3 months, and all of them without fail said, and we'll still deliver the same service. I was blown away. So we've done exactly the same thing to our clients. We went out to all of our clients and said, no bills for April, and we'll be 50% for May, June, and July in supporting. So are you looking for that support from your suppliers? Are you looking for that from everybody, basically? So are you managing your cash as best as you possibly can? Cash is going to be king. Just also notice there's a chat. If you want to flick me questions on this, I can respond to any questions that pop up. So please feel free to jump those in, and I'll give you my email at the end, or Steve will give it to you so that you can contact me and ask any questions. Same applies to you. Any client of Steve's, I'm more than happy to chat through what your strategy could be. So first thing, cash. Second thing, short, medium, long-term goals. The old Dale Carnegie worry principle had 2 brilliant ways of working through a big issue, and this is without a doubt a big issue. First of all, you have to sit down and accept what's the worst that can happen. And in my business, the worst thing that could happen is in 3 months' time, we'll have no work whatsoever. We are a discretionary spend, and whilst I have got clients that are asking us for help today because of the crisis, I've got just as many saying we need to stop because of the crisis. So the worst case scenario is nobody new comes and asks us for help, and all of our old clients batten down the hatches and disappear because we're a discretionary spend. So we started off 2 weeks ago with the worst case scenarios. We will have no clients by the end of May. Then once you've accepted the worst case scenario, you now have to improve on that. So what are all of the things we can do to improve on that? And that's when you get creative. Once you've let go of that fear of the worst case scenario, then you can start working to improve it. So I'm happy to tell you that the worst case scenario is now, when all this is over, we will definitely have one client, because one client has already confirmed they will be our client ongoing and when this is over. So what's the worst thing that can happen? Second thing is get busy. There is a lot of time on our hands. I'm actually finding I'm busier than when I was traveling to see clients, because Zoom is back to back to back all day long. But get busy doing something, get busy doing something productive. If you haven't got productive things to do, can you get busy learning something? There are so many ways you can improve your skill set. You can learn to do new things. So getting busy stops that dread creeping in, stops the energy getting sapped. Stop listening to the news would be another bit of advice, but that's your choice. I'm finding it quite depressing at the moment, so we're trying to avoid it as much as we can. So first, what's the worst thing that can happen? Now let's improve on that, and then get busy. Now, Steve's just talked about different products that are showing up as winners and different products that are showing up as losers in this economic climate. In any slowdown, any change of market, what you have to do is be very, very flexible. The American word pivot, I suppose, is you have to be able to pivot quickly. You have to be able to iterate quickly. Pubs are really struggling. Some industries just can't do that. Restaurants can go takeaway and delivery, but it's a bit difficult to deliver a round of 8 pints and make that work. So there are businesses that are just going to get smashed, and we're just going to have to hope that the government will support them to emerge, because we will still, I know people say, oh, it'll be different, we won't want to gather in public again. Trust me, 6 months, 9 months down the road, and we're predicting about an 18-month cycle here, people will be going back into pubs and they will be going back into restaurants. And there'll be less restaurants in business, so they'll be full and they'll be packed. So my encouragement is to have a really good look at the client base that you currently work with, and ask yourself, what message do they want to hear from me, and what product do they need to buy? And in some cases, you don't even need to change your product. I was talking to an accounting business recently, and they had been doing growth strategies for their client base. And they said, Nick, what do we do now with growth strategies for our client base? And I said, well, if you go and use numbers to calculate survival strategies for your client base and how well they need to redesign their finances to enable them to have enough money for growth when the bounce comes, I said, that's a product that's pertinent for today. And then when the market bounces, have you got don't overtrade strategies? Are you able to calculate strategies for them that stop them overtrading? Now, the product is the same. It's accounting and finance and statistical review of numbers, but the positioning and the languaging of it and the explanation of it is appropriate to the client's requirements. So my second big driver is, are you actually reiterating, re-engineering either the language around the product that you've got and how you explain it to people? Simple version, I spoke to an insolvency practitioners who had been doing fantastic in the W and the crash because so many businesses were going bust. They also had a bit of a blip of good business when the market started to expand, because people with no cash tend to run out of cash when the market grows, who are suddenly now, well, now they're going to have a lot more work, but had suddenly, up until about 2 months ago, started to run out of work. So I said, so if you take the learnings of the last 7 years and you go out to your client base with a how to not overtrade, or how to buffer for the next recession, with all of that history live in our minds, because even though the financial crash was, get this, 12 years ago, 2007, 2008, it's still very, very big in people's minds because it was a biggie. So are you playing to the concerns and the knowledge, lack of knowledge in the marketplace as to how to not overtrade? And who better to work out when you are insolvent and when you need to redesign your finances than somebody who sees hundreds and hundreds of businesses that go bust? They took that new messaging out to market and started to pull clients on board almost immediately. Now they can flip back to their insolvency, avoid going bust model now, and they should be in the advisory space now. So right now they should be marketing out to the marketplace. You know, we can give you advice about how to survive this period until the market picks up. So my next challenge to you is, are you iterating your language and or your product to be pertinent to the market? what do clients need today? And it looks like they need blinds and garden furniture. And if you don't supply either of those, then how do you make your product relevant to today's market? And as I say, sometimes it's really easy. You just have to relanguage it. I used to do food in a restaurant, and now I do takeaway and delivery. It's just a relanguaging and a redelivery packaging. Then your goals in terms of short, medium, and long term. I still had somebody say to me 2 days ago, yeah, short term 3 months, medium term a year, long term 3 years. I said, rubbish. Short term 1 week, medium term 1 month, maybe 2 months. Long term right now 3 to 6 months. Have you got real clear goals that your management team and or your staff or your partner have bought into, where you understand what you are doing for the next week and what you are doing for the next month and what you're doing for the next 6 months? Because the horizon now is get through this and be thriving in 6 months' time, not still hanging on by our fingernails. We used to meet as a team once a month. We'd all get together for a team meeting. We meet every morning now at 7:45 for 30 minutes. So we've changed our modus operandi, we've changed our offering to the marketplace, we've changed our pricing and packaging, we're changing our delivery model, we're iterating as fast as we possibly can to be available and viable and the right offering for our client base right now. So are you doing the same thing? And once you've got that clear, the third piece that makes all this work is people, and communicate. So and today, the beautiful thing I had a client say to me recently was, the nice thing about Zoom, Nick, is we, in our old business, didn't have a room big enough to put everybody in for a half an hour to an hour with you. I tend to be quite high energy, so I'm quite positive. So inflicting me on your teams and your staff sometimes is a big energy boost. So he said, what's really great is I can get all 230 people in the meeting with you, and we can do a cultural piece of work on how do we stay connected. And I ran a session with him to help him get his energy up in his business, because they were all in shock. So what's your communication strategy? How are you including everybody in it? And the things that we've asked our clients to do at the first session we ran is, and you could do this for yourselves in your management teams or with your offices if that's what you've got, is what have you done in the first 2 weeks to pivot your business? And secondly, what did you learn from doing that? Capturing the learnings of this, because the thought that this will never happen again is ridiculous. We'll have another one of something like these for some reason. So what have we done? What have we learned? And what do we need to do now? So we're now on the do now phase. For me, it's cash. Make sure we've got worst case scenario and we know what we need to do to get it right, and then get busy. Make sure our short, medium, long-term goals are appropriate for this, this market. Make sure our offering is appropriate to what our clients currently need, and make sure that our people are fully engaged, are being heard and listened to. Furloughed or not, are you still talking to them? I worked 3 or 4 years ago with a lovely business that specialized in coaching women and latterly men who were on maternity or paternity leave in senior management roles inside businesses, so that the business stayed connected to the person and the person stayed connected to the business, so that when they came back, it didn't feel so strange and they didn't feel so disconnected. And it reduced the number of people that left post coming back from maternity leave within the next 3 months, because they couldn't make the transition back, reduced that by 50% in 2 or 3 of the organizations that we were looking at. So are you going to have the same thing? Are you going to have people still engaged in your mission, in your vision, in your business, in your idea, when we do get back to whatever the new normal is? So if that's been helpful, the last thing I want to do is just take you through a bit of a tough conversation. So when we went into the W recession, and we had to help clients with that really tough time period, because it was going to be quite a long time period before the world was going to start accelerating again. We had to say to people, if you examined your business and it had grown from 0 when you started to 10 million, do whichever numbers you want, if it's 0 to 1 million, whatever that number is, and halfway through that journey in growth, we pulled your business P&L apart and had a quick look at it. You would have been spending money on things like recruitment, training, new product development, marketing and advertising. You'd have been throwing money at the markets, because every year's busier than the last, every month's busier than the last in growth. And you get all the way from start to 1, 5 or 10 million. Midpoint, look at the P&L. The market excuse me, the market crashes and it drops back down, and you're now back to half the revenue that you were doing. So if you got to 10 million, you're now back to 5 million. If I now pulled your P&L apart and looked at it, you wouldn't be spending anywhere near the same money on the things you were spending when you hit 5 million on the way up. What people tend to do is they cut back to survival mode, which is why they don't thrive. And when the market turns, there's no cash reserves, there's no energy left to go with the market and to bounce. So although this is a tough conversation, what you have to do in your cash management, your short and medium term goals, is for the survival of the business and the whole enterprise, you have to cut past break even. You have to cut to profitability. If it's possible to cut to profitability, if you're one of the businesses that needs the bridge gap from a bank or from the government, that may be quite hard to do. Still being viable in 3 months' time may be your goal. But if it's possible, if you have a business where you are hurting but not broken at the moment, you have to cut back to viability, profitability. And you have to take the small profit you are making and start to invest it in the strategies that you will implement. In other words, you need to design them in advance when the market bounces. Now, here's the good news. The stock market will give you advanced warning, and it's so important that you follow this, will give you advanced warning about 6 to 9 months that the market economy is going to bounce. The stock market will go first. The European FTSE 250, FTSE 100s, Dow Jones, if you keep an eye on those, they will give you a real clear indicator that the economy is going to catch up. You need to be on the forefront. You need to be marketing a relevant message to your potential client base now. And I said this on the last call, I'm sure, if every single estate agent took their signs down and only one put signs up, when the market shifts and you decide to put your house on the market, you can only remember one name. So Steve's just demonstrated that most of the market has stopped advertising. This is the very time you should be advertising. And to be able to do that, you must have cut your business back to profitability. So you're able to invest in 2 things. 1, letting the market know you're there to help and you've got a relevant product. And 2, looking after the staff that will be there to help you build the business when it bounces. So if you have any questions, please jump them through. If you want my email address and you want to throw individual questions at me, then please feel free to do that. I'd be more than happy to help. I hope that has been helpful. All I can encourage you to do is believe in the fact that this too will end, and believe in the fact that if you have a business that's viable post this, you will be able to get it up and running again. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. And that's fantastic, Nick. And just again to re-emphasize, so when Nick first met us at Push, we were a 750,000 odd turnover, stuck in a bit of a black hole. We're way beyond 10 times that kind of turnover now, and that's less than 5 years ago that I met Nick. So really good insights. Loads of that advice we've taken on board. I'll just sort of finish off on the culture piece really, and let people ask some questions. But we just like Nick has moved to really regular updates. We've moved from doing updates to our team. Who, by the way, we moved to working from home very quickly ahead of this lockdown. I mean, several weeks before the government required it. We used to do an update to the team round a big sort of screen with about 50 odd people, and we do that once every couple of months. Now we're doing it weekly. We do a weekly update, and for what it's worth, we do a Thursday pub quiz at 7:30 to keep them all engaged. So. If anyone's got any questions, please put them through on the chat, and we'll have them. And again, we'll follow up with this presentation, the recording, contact details for us. And as Nick said last week, genuinely, we are here to help businesses through this. We're not putting, we feel a need to help businesses regardless of the commercials here. We're here to try and help any kind of business, and we're working all hours to do that.
Yeah, just on that as well, Steve, I'm more than happy to continue to participate in anything you guys are doing for your client base. We're also doing some stuff ourselves, which any of your team are welcome to come and join. We're running a number of events over the very specifically around growth cycles. My number one go-to for all of the clients that we work with has always been the push model. I've always loved what Steve does. I think it's even more relevant now looking at some of the stats that people really start to understand that these guys are smashing it out the park. We don't see anybody else, and we see a lot of businesses coming to us and trying to get access to our clients to sell digital marketing services. We don't see anybody else, and trust me, I've looked, that is performing anywhere near the level that the guys at Push are. So we're happy to support your clients, mate. You just send them to us and we'll look after them, and we'll keep sending ours back.
Will do. So we're going to run some more webinars, including the one next week, which you can see. So I guess we'll love you and leave you all for now, and plenty more. But feel free to reach out. Don't be frightened to pick up the phone, send us an email, do whatever it is to ask a question. You know, it may be something you just have overlooked in your business that Nick or I can help you with. So thank you all very much for taking your time.
Thanks very much. Ciao. Have a lovely Easter, everybody. Stay safe.
Yeah. Take care. Bye bye.